When I was younger, as long as I can remember, I always had a slight fear of Santa Claus. I don't know what it was specifically, but even all the images of him with his cheery smile always creeped me out. My parents, however, must not have noticed or cared, specifically my mom. Every year, we'd go to the local mall, and I'd have to have my picture taken with Santa for our family's Christmas card. I dreaded it, but I was 7 years old at the time. It was that time of year again, and we were supposed to meet Santa at the mall around noon. Even though he creeped me out, at the time, I still believed Santa was real, so I had a list of items that I was wanting for Christmas that year. If I remember correctly, that year the main thing on my list was this big remote-controlled truck that I had seen in Walmart about a month back. I had some other things on there as well, but I really wanted that truck. We waited in line for about 30 minutes while the other kids got their turn with Santa. When it was my turn, I slowly made the walk up to Santa's chair. My mom had her camera ready. I took out my little piece of paper and sat down with Santa. He asked in a deep Santa-sounding voice what I would like for Christmas. I told him exactly what I had on the list. He talked to me for a little bit about things like making sure that I'd be good and all of that. I got my picture taken, and eventually my time was up. I stepped down and went back over to my mom. I looked back at Santa as we walked away, and he seemed to be staring at me. I didn't really like that, and just turned right back around. My mom had to do some Christmas shopping, so we stayed around the mall for a while. We were there for probably at least another 2 hours. At one point, we walked over to one of the stores where Santa had been set up. When we got back over there, he was gone. This was to my delight. I didn't want there to be a chance for him to be staring at me again. I remember my mom told me she had to run to the restroom real quick, and for me to just wait for her outside the bathrooms. I was outside waiting when a man approached me. He was older, maybe mid-50s, and he started talking to me, asking my name and that sort of thing. Eventually the conversation shifted, and he explained to me that he worked for Santa, and he knew that I wanted a remote-controlled truck for Christmas. He then said that if I followed him, I could receive it now instead of waiting till Christmas. It was an enticing offer. However, even at 7 years old, I knew my mom wouldn't like it if I walked off with a stranger. The man kept trying to persuade me. As he kept talking and looking at me, I noticed he sounded and looked a lot like Santa. His eyes looked to be the same as Santa's. Fortunately, my mom came out of the bathroom and over towards me. Once the man realized that my mom was coming over to me, he tried to play it off as if he wasn't just talking to me. He walked off as my mom took my hand. We ended up leaving the mall after that, even though I don't think we had gotten everything we planned on getting. My mom knew something wasn't right, and just decided it would be best to leave. The man who tried to lure me outside that day was definitely the same person dressed up as Santa at the mall. Even a character who's supposed to be as innocent as Santa Claus is not always who they appear to be. It was Christmas Eve. My daughter, of course, was super excited since Santa would be paying the house a visit tonight. It took a while to finally calm her down and get her to bed. Christmas Eve and Christmas Day are always kind of stressful for us. Anyways, we put my daughter to bed, and my wife and I were getting ready for bed ourselves. About 30 minutes later, my daughter ran into our room saying that she saw Santa outside her window. I got up hesitantly and looked outside the window. There was no one outside. I showed my daughter and told her to go back to bed so that Santa could deliver the presents. She went back to her room, and I once again tried to fall back asleep. About another hour passed, and once again my daughter came running into our room, claiming that she saw Santa outside. Once again, I got up to look out the window, and there was no one. She went back to her room, and fortunately, that was the end of the distractions for the night. The next morning, we woke up extra early and watched my daughter open all her presents. We had some family to meet up with, so we were pretty much gone the whole day. The following day, I went outside to grab the mail and ran into my neighbor Mark, who lives directly across the street. We struck up a conversation about how each other's Christmas had went and that sort of thing. I told him ours went well and asked about his family. He explained that on Christmas Eve night, someone had broken into their house and stolen some of the Christmas presents. I was surprised to hear this. That type of thing pretty much never happens in our neighborhood. He also said that he had a camera in his house facing the street, and it basically showed the intruder walking out of their house with various presents. Mark offered to show me the video, and like he said, it pretty much showed all you needed to see. What really caught my attention was the attire the intruder was wearing. He was wearing a full Santa suit, with the boots, hat, everything. I got an uneasy feeling in my stomach as I remembered back to the previous night when my daughter came into my room saying that she had seen Santa across the street. There was a timestamp on the video that Mark was showing me, and the time seemed to match up pretty good. I told Mark what happened last night with me and my daughter, and he didn't seem too surprised. Mark did notify the police at some point about the situation, and the news spread pretty quickly around the neighborhood. I was never contacted by police for being an eyewitness, but I suppose the video was all that they needed. I never did hear for sure if the person was caught, and to this day, I don't think Mark has heard anything either. We got lucky. Our house could have easily been the one targeted by this person. Either way, this year on Christmas, I'll be making sure that all the doors and windows are locked. My family was hosting Christmas this particular year, like we commonly did. This year, I had to help out more around the house than in previous years. Things like cleaning and making food and just stuff like that. My family was small enough that our house was plenty big enough to fit everyone. It was only my family, grandparents, aunt and uncle, and 2 cousins that would be coming over. Christmas morning, everything was pretty crazy, from opening presents to still trying to get the house ready for our guests to come over. Right before everyone started showing up, my dad told me to run down to the storage room in the basement and grab a couple fold-up tables and bring them upstairs, as well as a few chairs. I went downstairs to the basement, opened the door to the storage room, and turned on the light. To be honest, there was a ton of junk in there that we didn't need. Some of the tables were in the corner, behind other junk. I was maneuvering between various stuff to get over to the tables when I noticed in the corner there was a life-size Santa prop of some kind. I had never seen that thing before, and it looked so real. I looked at it for a couple of seconds, wondering if it actually could have been. The hat was over top his eyes, which seemed a little weird to me. My dad called my name from upstairs, so I grabbed the 2 tables and went back up. I still had to go back down there and grab some chairs. While I was setting the table up in the living room, I asked my dad what was up with the Santa prop thing in the storage room. He looked at me as if I had 4 heads and asked what I was talking about. I told him I saw it downstairs in the back and was just curious why they had it. He told me that they had no such thing, but I knew I had just seen it. I told my dad to follow me and I'd show him what I was talking about. We got downstairs, and now the side basement door was wide open. My dad was mad at me for leaving it open and letting cold air into the house, but I didn't open it. I walked into the storage room and back to the corner where I saw the Santa figure. It was gone. I legit had chills all over my body. I walked back to my dad and told him what was going on. I don't know if my dad believed anything I said up until that point, but he took me more serious once he heard the tone of my voice completely change. We shut the basement door, locked it, and called the police. Family started showing up right around the time police arrived. We gave the police the little information we had, and they did a quick search around the property, then went on their way. The rest of Christmas went about as normally as it could have, given the circumstances. I couldn't stop thinking about it, though. So many unanswered questions like, who was that person? How long had they been in our house? How did they get in? Had they been wandering around the house while we were asleep? I try not to think about it too much, but this experience is almost always brought back up in my mind in some way whenever I see an image of Santa Claus, even to this day.